welcome everybody that came tonight, both in person and online. And I'm Arliss Raitan, Wachiska's office administrator. And tonight, Mark is unable to be at the meeting, and a couple other people, I think, had something going on, so it fell to me to be the moderator. So I haven't done this for several years, but we'll see if we can't get done. It sounds like an interesting and informative program tonight, which will coincide with an event that Wachiska is sponsoring later in the month. On June 22nd, we're going to have our annual Tour the Wild Side event, which will be a self-guided tour of 7 properties in the Lincoln area where they are gardening with native plants. So if you've taken part before, I think it's quite similar this year. It's free to the public. It's the tour extends from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, June 22nd. And it's open to the public free of charge. Homeowners will be available to answer questions if you come across something that you don't know what it is or you'd like to find out more about it and maybe put it in your garden. And there will be giveaway drawings, so be sure to sign up at the different locations if you're interested in that. The yard descriptions are on our website and in the current newsletter, if you get the newsletter. The newsletter's also on the website, so check one of those places if you're interested and you don't have your own copy. Tonight's program is being live streamed, as I mentioned, and can be viewed on YouTube. Past programs are archived on our website where they can be viewed anytime. And please sign the register at the front table just as you come in if you haven't done that, because we keep track of our numbers. And I know it's kind of troublesome or time consuming, but please write legibly so that we can read it, because Linda and I have quite a time. And be sure to put your information down with your email address or your phone number or your address, especially if it's changed in the last few months. And even if last month you put the new one down, sometimes we miss something in the way. So for a little while, we'd really appreciate it if you'd fill out the form. Before we go any further, what unusual or interesting bird species has anyone seen in the last month or so?
Yeah, I went to the Smith unit of the Rainwater Basin about a week or so ago and saw a pair of upland sandpipers.
Upland sandpipers, okay.
Some big sizzles. We have 3 blue jay nestlings in our backyard.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Yeah. Anybody else?
Okay. Well, that's not yet.
Oh, is that Lana?
I wish I had something to say. I don't know. We were at Utan Prairie last night, and so Tim was there spraying the white clover, but there were dicks and bobs there too. Dick thistles and bobolinks and bobwhites and meadowlarks, and it was fun.
At Not Prairie.
Utan Prairie.
Utan Prairie.
And Arliss, can you repeat the birds?
Yeah, bobolinks, I didn't hear them.
Dick thistles,
Dick thistles,
bobolinks, bobwhites,
bobwhites,
and a heron flew over, and meadowlarks.
heron flew over, and meadowlarks at Utan Prairie. Anybody else? Okay. Mark wanted me to report that there have been 3 bobolinks nesting at Arbor Lake. It's just north of Lincoln. And the report was about 2 weeks ago. Has anyone discovered that or been out there to corroborate that? I think it was a pretty for sure thing. I don't know if he got it from Game and Parks or where he got that report. Okay. Tim, Bruce?
Did you happen to mention the front page news article on the peregrine chicks, 3 of them, on the state capitol that Joel Jorgensen banded today? Did you mention
Yeah,
that?
we didn't mention that, but on the front page of the Journal-Star, Joel Jorgensen from Game and Parks was featured banding peregrine falcons. How many was it? Three? Three.
Females and a male?
Yeah, it was on the TV news at 10 o'clock a couple of nights ago, but I didn't know about the paper.
He
Okay.
said they were distinguished by the size of their feet.
Distinguished by the size of their feet.
The sex,
What?
the sex was the,
Yeah. What is it, Linda, which is which?
I don't know, I know female raptors are usually bigger than males, so I was guessing that it means that female peregrines have bigger feet than male peregrines, but that's a guess.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Tim reminds me to announce that Birdathon donations are still being accepted in the Wachiska office. If you've misplaced the envelope that came with the letter, I think it was in April, please note Birdathon on the memo line of your check, and then it'll get credited to the right place. And this is the 36th year that we've had Birdathon, consecutive year.
Wow.
So, that's leading up to a pretty good record. Next month, we're going to have an indoor potluck picnic, similar to last year, and it'll be at the July general meeting. And then afterwards, the program will follow, and being given by Sarah Browning from Backyard Farmer. A lot of you would know her from there. She also does a monthly or a weekly column in the Journal-Star. And her topic is what's wrong with my evergreen tree. You'll see in the newsletter that she goes on to say that she will answer questions on any trees, not just evergreens, and that she encourages people to bring pictures. If you have a tree that's dying or that's brown or wilted or something, be sure to bring the pictures, and she will discuss them and tell you what's wrong with them. She's been with Nebraska Extension since 1998, I think, and she's just real knowledgeable. I saw her at the 50th anniversary, and there were 2 chairs next to her, and I just sneaked right in because I've been wanting her for a long time for a program. So we set it up in December, and she's following through, so I'm really excited about that. The potluck, it'll be explained more in the newsletter, but it's the typical, and we have lots of good cooks and lots of salads. We just have an abundance of salads this time of year. That's kind of why I have it in July.
And where's it gonna be?
It'll be right here.
Okay.
Right here in the open area outside this room. Okay. For those of you that are here in person, we invite you to join us for cookies after the program. We have cookies from the Cookie Company tonight, and also Dennis King, who provides cookies so often. He's right over here. He brings my favorite cookies, so be sure and have one, but if you don't really like them, leave the rest. And those of you that are at home, you'll have to raid your cupboard to find a cookie. So, are there any announcements from the audience pertaining? Linda?
Well, again, I brought more bird books from retired biology professor Jim Rosowski. He's cleaning out, and he gave me 6 banker boxes of bird books, and I've gotten rid of 4 boxes. Tonight there's another box of free, wonderful bird books sitting out by the patio doors on a table. Please look them over and take what you'd like. They're free.
I took 2 for the office that I can use for reference for the newsletter.
Good.
But there were some nice books out there. Okay, so at this time, I think we're ready to have Dave Titterington from the Wild Bird Habitat Store introduce our speaker for the evening.
Well, go stand so we can see you.
Yes.
Has a microphone hanging around his neck.
Is it working?
Oh, let's see. Turn it on. Wait a minute, it's me. Okay,
And
is it on now?
is Is it on?
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so over the past 30 years, next to Wild Bird Habitat Store's north location, and the only reason I'm saying that because for the last 30 years I've been driving by this property that we're going to talk about tonight on 50th Street, North 50th. It's bordered by Dudley to the north, Orchard to the south, and the old stucco house there has changed hands over 30 years several times. And the old stucco house there on this property is surrounded by some nice large mature trees, but it always had a lawn and of mixed grasses and unruly weeds that once in a while got mowed. And then I don't know what happened. Over the past couple of years, an amazing transformation to this property has taken place by its new owner, Yvonne Meyer. Yvonne has a BA in sociology, an MFA in photography, and a post-baccalaureate in K through 12 art education, along with an amazing passion for gardening with nature in mind. Yvonne used this new property that she had as her canvas. She replaced the lawn with a bounty of colorful native plants in rain gardens and berms that she installed. She also created additional pollinator gardens along the easements on the 3 sides of her property. And it didn't take long for her work to be rewarded with the return of an abundance of insects and birds. And this property, it has become known as the Orchard Street Pocket Prairie, attracting not only the attention of birds and insects, but her neighbors who enjoy the diverse colors and textures on the palette that the native plants have provided. And even the children at Riley's Elementary School, right across the street on Orchard from Yvonne's property, are enjoying the insect and bird habitats that she has created. Yvonne currently teaches photography in the art department at Lincoln High School, and she will be opening her property to visitors during Wachiska Audubon's 2024 Tour of the Wild Side, June 22nd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I bet if you go there, you're going to spend a lot of time because there's an awful lot to see. So here to talk to us about the meaningful action that she has taken on her property and how we can all do this is Yvonne Meyer.
Thank you, Dave. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me here tonight. Now, when I'm out, you can't hear me?
Wait a minute.
How about now?
Well, did you
Yeah.
turn it on?
Yeah, it's on. It's on. I can
Now
hear
I
me.
hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we good?
Are we good, family?
All
Yes,
right.
we are.
All right. My computer fell asleep while I
Talk
was
louder.
talk louder. I can do that. All right. Well, thank you. As Dave said, he drives by my house on the way to the Wild Bird Habitat store and pulled over, and eventually that is how I was invited to do this presentation, just from him kind of observing what's happening there, which is a lot of different experiments. And the one thing he said before I started presenting is, make sure you have a lot of pictures. So Dave, I think you'll find there'll be plenty. I should have had him define what that meant. All right, maybe my clicker may have fallen asleep too. Let's see.
Remember to, oh, I know. I have to move the pointer over to your,
Oh, okay.
over to your screen.
All right.
Okay, now.
All right, perfect. Is it possible to go to full screen? And if not, that's fine. It's fine.
Can you turn down the lights?
Yeah, I will.
It's all good.
Is that your screen that's up there? 'Cause if so,
It is not.
You control it.
It's not my screen, it's Linda's. My screen is. All right, but I will start my screen as well, just because that may help keep me on track a little bit. Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for having me here tonight. And Dave has already introduced me. I won't spend a lot of time I'm definitely not positioning myself as an expert here, but I am going to position myself as someone who is fairly fearless in trying things and making mistakes, which sometimes works out, sometimes doesn't, but my rubric is sort of like if I learned from it or not. And this has been a major learning experience for me. So I won't linger on that particular slide. Now, classroom instruction that works, as already mentioned, I teach at Lincoln High School. So you don't start any lesson without knowing where you're headed. So these are the objectives for tonight. Basically, I'm going to be talking a little bit about ecological gardening, what that means, placemaking and joy are some of the vocabulary that is going to be probably the more important things. We all know that the most important thing is the key understanding, and that is basically every person has a purpose, and we all can contribute meaningfully, and there's just so many different ways to do that, and that's going to be the real message here tonight for me. And then the other things I'm hoping that my experience and just me making the mistakes that I've made will be able to show is that it is possible to cover big swaths of land on a budget. And so there's a lot of different things that I've tried over the years. Over the year, I guess I'm going to show you 1 year. Basically, that's all this has been, and just what sort of things I learned about how to do that. And you know, you may already be very familiar with resources for ecological gardening and where to get plants and plugs and information, those things. But that's something that I've spent a lot of time just gathering and learning along the way. So basically, my hope is through the Orchard Street Pocket Prairie, I get to benefit from having a beautiful place that I can go to at the end of the day. But I also hope that it inspires other people or makes it as an example to other people of just how this can be done. And it's kind of amazing once you start partnering with nature, just how quickly it can actually be accomplished. So the presentation tonight is going to be in kind of 3 main segments. The first one is, it's sort of important to know how I got here, just like kind of the background or the context of where I began. And we're going all the way back to childhood here, folks. So how long do I have tonight? So we're going to start with background a little bit. And then I'm going to kind of show you the processes, like actually the sheet mulching and winter sowing and some of the techniques that I used in order to do this on a budget. And then I'm going to end with just like the vision and kind of like the call of action at the end. So that's sort of where we're going to head tonight. Hopefully that fits with your, hopefully that will fit with your interests as well. So, all right, so like I said, we're going back to the very beginning. And here it is. I don't know, I'm like probably 3 years old in that picture. But my connection to nature started in childhood, and we're finding out just how very important that ends up being. A few years back at the Ian Thompson Forum at the Lead Center, I had the opportunity to listen to Richard Louv talk about his book, The Last Child in the Woods. Were any of you I don't know, remember which year it was, were any of you actually at that? It was, yes, okay, it was amazing. I mean, it was in his book, basically he's talking about just the increasing divide between the young and the natural world, the environmental, social, psychological, spiritual implications of that change, and also talks about just the importance, not just to children, but to all of us, that spiritual connection to nature. The quote that I took from his book that I wanted to start with, though, was that nature is imperfectly perfect. It's filled with loose parts and possibilities, with mud and dust, nettles and sky, transcendent hands-on moments and skinned knees, which just feels like that really describes kind of like the childhood that I got to experience in so many different ways. Now, if I ruled the world, everyone would have a camera as soon as they could hold one and start documenting and telling their stories. So, but these are some pictures out of the old family albums, which kind of just give you a sense of my childhood, as well as I've got there's siblings in there, but I grew up on a farm in northeast Nebraska, and as part of that, we had the opportunity to have daily contact with plants, animals, nature. There was, there was enough autonomy that we were responsible for our own animals and gardens, and hours of chores before school and after school, and that wasn't always fun, but it gives a sense for just opportunities to develop just a strong sense of connection and stewardship of, just a feeling of connection with animals and plants. And I think that has, I think that probably dispositionally, I don't know, nature, nurture, how much to go with each, but nurture definitely took me there, and the experiences I got to have as a child made a huge difference, having that daily contact. And then the other source that I would want to cite today is Bestefar. This is Guilford Nissen, and Bestefar is grandfather in Danish, and that is how I knew him, is Bestefar. And when we'd go to his house in the summer, he had this most amazing garden, and it was just filled with, not necessarily, there were natives in there, but that wasn't the main focus. The focus was just like everything was kind of layered and growing into each other, and there was these trails going through, and it was just this kind of magical childhood place that always left a big impression on me. And Bestefar, in addition to having this incredible place of welcome, for pollinators and children, as long as you don't pick anything, learned that one the hard way. But he would make these massive bouquets all summer long. Anyone, like if there's a birthday, if there was a funeral, he was right across from St. John's Church, that St. John's Church at the end of the sidewalk there. And every Sunday he had just massive bouquets, and so just sharing. And so he's someone else that I would definitely have to just cite as an early inspiration to me of what gardening could look like and what it could mean and just the impact that it could have. So all of that is to say that, grew up and nature's sort of my happy place. If I'm exhausted from teaching or something's going on, for me, going home and taking a nap or scrolling on the phone is relaxing, can be relaxing. But the most relaxing thing for me, quite honestly, is going for a walk in nature and just kind of, there's something that just sort of slows down and something that just kind of comes back to center for me when I'm in nature. So that is my happy place and has been since I was a child. I need to go to here just because I think that sometimes you're fortunate to have multiple purposes in life. And I didn't know that one of my purposes was teaching until I was in my 40s. I wasn't one of those 18-year-olds that just knew that right off the bat. But I did grow there through a lot of different experiences. And at this point, I've been at Lincoln High for 12 years. And it is like nurturing and empowering students and being part of people's growth process. That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing to be part of. It is, education can be transformative, and to be the person there in the room with someone having that experience. All of the people I serve have their entire adult lives ahead of them. It's a profound thing to be able to do that. And I find so much, joy, most of them, joy in doing that. Now we go to the next slide. Okay, that was true. That is true. It's becoming true again. But during the pandemic teaching was a tricky, difficult thing. And what makes teaching important is relationships and building relationships with students and helping students kind of grow through challenges and set goals and find where they're going. And the sense of community is what I so loved about teaching. And during the pandemic, it really was fractured, and people were not available for connection to each other, and it was not recognizable as education. It was more something to be. It wasn't something that was now feeding my soul. It was something that kind of like Sisyphus rolling something up the hill and then having to take it back up the next day. It was just like dragging dead bodies up the hill every day and doing it again and again and again. You guys, there was no enthusiasm or lesson planning, or like the children were not available to play. They were not available, and they stayed not available to play for several years after that. And that's a different talk entirely. So we're not going to go there. But the main thing I want you to know is just that teaching was and will be again, and is starting to get back to that place of joy. But it was because of the pandemic that my passion for gardening, passion for nature, kind of moved in another direction. And that was in part because I needed to find a soft place to land. And for me, that was regenerative agriculture is where I started. But then I found Benjamin Vogt, Prairie Up. His book is one that was really helpful and inspiring to me. He has lots of YouTube videos as well, does a ton of work around town installing prairies for homeowners, and his work is very important, and he gave me the template for how to do things. And then Douglas Tellamy was the other person who I found. Now I got to hear him, that's later in the slideshow, but he came here in December, and just one thing, at school, we were invited for the yearbook to tell like a celebrity that we had gotten to meet. And I was very proud to tell them, Douglas Tellamy. Nobody knew very few people knew who I was talking about. I don't think they picked me to have it in the 2-page spread, but when I found out, when Dave stopped by and told me that he was going to be presenting, it was like, no, I could hardly even believe it. If you haven't had a chance, the speech that he gave for Audubon Society was Nature's Best Hope, and you can find that easily on YouTube as well. And it is, if you haven't had the opportunity to see that, it is one of the things that was most persuasive. He's an amazing educator and storyteller and has the science and the humor and the timing, and he has profoundly changed my opinion about what gardening should or could be about. Okay, you made it through the background part. Let me catch up to myself. Okay, so the middle section is going to be a little bit more just kind of about the process and what that looked like. And I was trying to figure out how I wanted to tell this story, and I had many branches going on my thesis of what I was going to say to you. And so I had to try to figure out how to contain it a little bit. And so what I decided to do is, there's a lot of different, as Dave said, there's a lot of different experiments going on at 5011 Dudley Street. Please come on over and see it on the 22nd. But I'm not going to talk about rain gardens or berms or bioswales or any of those other projects that were going on inside the fence. So tonight I just want to talk about just one small piece of it, and that is Orchard Street Pocket Prairie. So Orchard Street is, my intention was to, I like to give my projects names, and I like the name to have something to do with the intention, and it helps me kind of keep things organized. So Orchard Street is the street that literally runs by it, although I love the imagery of Orchard Street, and if I could have an orchard somewhere, I don't know. I'm going to talk to Riley once I've been there long enough, elementary, about maybe we need an orchard. And then Pocket, it's small. It's about 10 feet by 100 feet. It's a double lot, and it's on the hill strip between the fence and the road, which was just plants that I mowed. Some of it was grass, but most of it was just not grass. And then prairie is the ecosystem that that was the ecosystem that was here, 150 years ago or however long ago that has been. So my hope was to try to bring it back to what it had been previously. Again, the way that I move through things is always to try to have goals, just to understand all this. I'm going to go back to education because that's what I know. So understanding by design is a way of designing curriculum where you try to decide what is the end point that you want everyone to get to, and then you design your curriculum backwards to give people the skills and the thinking ideas and the experiences they need to get there. And so I always like to start with where is it that I'm hoping to end up, and then I kind of like build back from there. So my goal with Orchard Street Pocket Prairie is I wanted to create habitat first and foremost for bugs. Bugs and birds, and there's foxes that run through and rabbits, and there's a few mammals in there, but it's not a very big piece of land. So create habitat. People, I'm going to get into this a little bit more later, but in the neighborhood, which story to tell? Yeah, growing up, I had access to nature. Teaching at Lincoln High, sometimes I'll have students do an activity where you're talking about defining what nature is and what culture is and where the Venn diagram overlaps. And students, the best they could come up with was park, lawn, things like that. And so that has always stuck with me a little bit, just that kids really don't always have that much connection or attachment to nature. So I want it to be a place, a place where children can explore. I want it to be a place where people are going to stop and linger and just watch, a monarch caterpillar eating on a milkweed and just find peace in that. And then finally, I also have a Facebook presence with the intention of just making, sharing, the mistakes in the learning process that I've made, kind of sharing that with other people so you can maybe learn from my mistakes, is my thinking there. Okay, so here we go. One of the first things that I learned, and I'm so surprised by as I was putting this presentation together, is that at the beginning of May last year, there was very few plants in the ground. In fact, I was still sheet mulching that area in April of last year. So this picture, and this is fall of 2023, and in spring of 24, there's even more. But for this presentation, I'm only going to have us talking about just 1 year. So I'm going to take you through 1 year of Pocket Prairie. The pictures that you're going to see, this is just the way I make sense of my life, and that is to make books. And so as I was putting this together and just trying to find all the pictures to tell the story, what you're going to be seeing are 2-page spreads out of books that I create. The only reason why I'm mentioning this is because not everything on every page is going to be specific to the Orchard Street, but the pictures that are on there will correspond to what I'm actually wanting to talk about with the Pocket Prairie. But you'll be seeing some other things perhaps as well. So I'm just going to take you through the year 2023, and this is the year that I decided to actually go for it and try this. So we're going to start in January of 2023 and kind of just take you through kind of what that prairie plant restoration on the easement looks like. All right. So the first thing, oh yeah.
Go back. I
Yeah,
want to know
yeah,
all those. What are those?
Yeah, oh this, you know what? I'm going to talk about that. The thing you're seeing there is winter sowing, which is if you need a lot of, okay, that's what that is. That's what that is. Yeah. Yeah, winter sowing, which maybe, we're going to start with sheet mulching, but winter sowing is coming quick because that's something, so in the, there's a lot to do in April and May when the world starts to, thaw, and but there's not as much gardening to do in January and February, or so you might think. I do not really enjoy working in weather like this when it's hot and humid like this outside, and so for me, January is a great time to do a lot of prep. Sheet mulching, so everything on the Pocket Prairie, there was lawn there before, and basically just covered the whole thing with cardboard that I found in the school recycling or my recycling or city recycling, or if someone was moving, I just said, I want all of your cardboard, and so I had people collecting cardboard, and I'd come home from school and there'd just be big piles of cardboard thrown over the fence, which was amazing, because there's another slide talking about the other ways you can do this, but this is by far the easiest, fastest, and most weed-resistant way that I've found of the 3 ways that I'm going to talk about. So yeah, winter sowing. If this is a technique, and there's a whole website, there's a whole Facebook page very dedicated to what winter sowing is. But if you have, how many of you have winter sown before, in containers? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically, the reason there's some nice advantages of winter sowing, and some of those advantages include things like you're going to get higher germination rates, you're going to have hardened off seedlings, you have a lot more control. If you broadcast a bunch of wildflower seeds out there and then try to figure out which one of those are the weeds and which ones are the seedlings, it's much easier to go in with a plug and actually put your seedlings in, I think. So it gives you a little bit more control, and it just allows. And then also, if you're trying to do a lot of native plants, a lot of times those need cold, moist stratification in order to break dormancy. And so you don't have to worry about it because nature knows what she's doing. And so all you have to do is just add soil to a jug, cut the jug open, add soil to it, spray it down with some water in the sink, put your seeds on top, just press them in so they're getting into the ground. Put a tag in there because that Sharpie, it's going to wear off by the time you get to April and take those babies out. So you put a tag on the inside and you tape it shut and you put it outside, and if it's a dry winter, you got to water sometimes, but mostly you just let it go and it's just going to do its thing. You can plant your tomatoes and peppers if you want in January. Now it's not a greenhouse. Those aren't going to germinate until the sun and the temperature are at the right place, but you don't have to worry about it other than just keeping it moist enough. So what you get is in the spring, you get these hardy plants, exactly of the varieties you want, and you don't have to worry about putting things in your fridge. As long as you have a place to put your milk jugs outside, you're in good shape. The trick to getting seedlings to germinate is just knowing what they need to break dormancy, and that's different for each plant. And so there's all kinds of amazing resources, but Prairie Moon Nursery, this is located in Winona, Minnesota. Has anyone gotten plants or know of that? Okay, yeah. It is a pretty, they have so many resources. So even if you never buy plants from them, if you check out their stratification codes, all of their seeds, that's just one example, that's lead plant. And it'll tell you the code for germination on all of them, and you just read that and do that. The warm prairie grasses that I'm planting right now outside in just a whole bunch of flats are A, which mean they don't need anything. They just need heat and water and sunlight. They're going to be fine. But if you have like something with a C10 or a C60 or a C90, winter sow that baby in January and just pull your seedlings out in April and May and you're good to go. So anyway, it just seemed miraculous to me, there's like someone's already figured out the code and you just have to kind of follow the directions from there. I do grow things inside just because for me it's maybe even more about January and February. I need green. I need growing things and I need green. So I do plant things like, I play around with butterfly weed and some prairie grasses just because it's fun, and some vegetables as well. But most of what I do is winter sowing, and this is really more just for mental health purposes, perhaps. Yeah. Hey, February. Yeah. So you in that slide, I guess you can see outside. So that's like when it snows. Like really, you just leave your jugs out there, and they just like it snows, and that's good when it snows on it because then you're going to get some moisture in there. And then on the inside, more likely to have cat damage. That's one of the hazards of being an inside plant. But you kind of have them going in both places, so you kind of hedge your bets. So stratification, this is getting kind of technical, but like these are all the things I learned in 2023. Basically, plants are like hardwired to not just like as soon as you get a 70-degree day in January, which does happen sometimes, if you break dormancy, you're in trouble. So nature has like protected itself, and you have to break that dormancy in order to get germination. And so things like freeze thaw. That's just really nice when you have like winter sowing to take care of that for you. So we've made it to March. Spring is coming, and that is a happy, good thing. I love March when it comes around because green is starting to happen. It's happening in the yard, and some of the earliest plants inside the jugs, you can start seeing, you'll start seeing lupin and a lot of your just cool season plants start to green up already in March. And it just feels like a miracle to me every time. So, direct sowing is the way nature actually does it. And I would aspire eventually, and my intention is to let like the plants that are self-sowing, to let them go ahead and direct sow and then just kind of manage where it starts to interfere with people's activities. But on that first year, because I had just sheet mulched, direct sowing wasn't going to work as well as plugs. Basically, I was making plants and then that's a cement mixing drill there, and then you can just right through your cardboard with that drill and then put your plugs in there. So eventually, like in the year 2024, I'm direct seeding things right into the ground, just as another way of growing things. So my main reason for not doing it there, again, was just because I was sheet mulching or making berms, and like the lands that it was going to be planted into didn't exist in the form it was until, later in the process. Okay, one of the things that people have asked me about, there are a lot of different ways you can do this. Like planting your own plants from seeds, obviously, is going to be a lot cheaper buying a $3.50 pack of seeds from Prairie Moon or wherever you get yours from, than even buying a plug, at one of the, I feel like I'm making a lot of noise here. There. What are we saying? Oh, yes, yeah. And so, that's a great way to save money, but there are programs that want you to succeed. So Rainscaping Lincoln, how many people in this room have done a project with rainscaping? Okay, yeah. So you already know. The process is really quite straightforward. Basically, I put this in the March part just because, this year, apply as soon as it opens, just because I think by the end of March they were already filled up. Basically what the rainscaping program is the city of Lincoln wants us to keep our stormwater out of and all of the pollutants that are in the urban scene out of the waterways. And so in order to do that, they are reimbursing up to $2,000. So they'll match you. So you spend $4,000, they're gonna reimburse you $2,000 in order to do one of several projects. So you can do lawn alternative, and that's what Orchard Pocket Prairie was. That's lawn alternative, because I got rid of all of that lawn and put in stuff that was holding like native plants to hold in like the rain. And then rain gardens and cement pavement removal. These are all things you can do. So basically, you give them a proposal, they come and look at your site, they approve your site and your project. If it fits their idea, you go ahead and do the work or hire the work, collect your receipts, and then at the end you come back and they're gonna inspect your work and you'll basically be reimbursed for 50% of your receipts. So it is a nice way if you need to extend your budget. It's an amazing program that they have made for us, and that's something this will be the third year in a row actually that I've used that program in order to make a lot of improvements around the property. And that's this year's proposal right there that's what this year's look like. So anyway, if you have any questions about that, let me know, because it's really quite easy process to do, and I can kind of help you through that if that's of interest to you. Okay. Yeah, so kind of already talked about this, so I won't go into it too much more, but basically you just get tough seedlings, and it's much easier to control your moisture and like birds or squirrels getting into your seedlings when they're in a container. And so again, if you are wanting tough seedlings and just better germination rates, that's the way to go, my friends. April. It's a very pink time in my yard. All right, whoop, go backwards. One of the things that I wanted to do, kind of lost myself. Yep, there we go. One of the things that I wanted to do is I want this to be a place where children can come and like actually explore, or people could actually explore and get off the sidewalk. And so you can kind of see where the compost is, sort of where the eco-grass is going to go. And basically eco-grass is just, it's a fescue blend, and it just requires minimal mowing. It doesn't require a lot of fertilizer, and it's going to have much deeper roots than bluegrass does. But it still looks like lawn that is recognizable. Talamy talks about cues to care and having lawn and mowed and making it not look like a weed patch. And so I wanted that cue to care so people wouldn't call the weed police on me. And so have some lawn in there that was recognizable and kind of comforting. And then I also wanted there to be a place for people to actually get off the sidewalk and get closer, get in there closer to the plants. And lawn is it's much nicer to walk, than trying to, fight your way through. So one of the issues I had was just trying to get that eco-grass to germinate. And I guess I've already talked about cues to care. So in Photoshop, Lincoln, as a teacher, I have access to drone, and sometimes I had to practice at home with drone before I was with students, as that turned out. And that gives you some nice aerial planning pictures. Google Maps or Google Earth, you can get pictures from the air without a drone of your property, and you can do the same thing and lay that into Google Slides, put a transparency and make your own drawings. But that's how I did it using the drone. And it's just helpful for planning and trying to figure out where things should go, which that's about as much planning as I did, is just trying to figure out roughly where drifts of things would go, and then a lot of it just becomes intuitive, kind of like when you're gardening, to see kind of what plants fit with which plants. So finding source materials, there's a lot of opportunities, everywhere right now on parking lots in most stores and supermarkets for buying bedding plants of all kinds, but trying to source your native plants is, so that's something, if you don't know where to look, that you have to look a little harder to find them. We're so fortunate that we have places like Midwest Natives. They have one more sale left here this coming Saturday, so get over there because that's the last one until August again. But Midwest Natives here in town is a great place to get stuff. Prairie Moon will ship you bare root plants, pots, seeds. That's my main source for getting seeds. When I was trying to set this up, I needed 100 drop seed plants. And you can go to the Arboretum, and that's a great place to go too, and they can sell that to you, but not 100 at a time. So Isle is a great place to go. Anyway, there's just so many resources, and you get them cheaper when you're buying smaller plugs. And by the end of the season, they're going to be, it's amazing how much bigger they are even by the end of the season. So. Again, it's just a great way to kind of extend your budget, and just so many different options for where you can get things. When picking your seeds or getting your plants, this is kind of a Benjamin Voigt, in his book he talks a lot about this, and that is the idea of ecotype, and just trying to source your plants and your seeds as close to where they would have been historically, just because things develop differently specifically to its place in the world and the soil and the light and the climate. We are, if you didn't know, we are ecotype 47I, the Los and Glacial Drift Hills. And so that's something when I'm getting seeds or getting plants, I'm trying to, as much as possible, get things that are as close to Lincoln as possible. But sometimes that isn't always easily done. But it's something to keep in mind. May, oh gosh, April and May and October, I think are the most beautiful months of the year. Just so many blooms, just glorious. The property had a lot of peonies on it when I bought it, and most of them are still there. They're so beautiful, and the smell. So planting plugs, that's something I've already mentioned with ISIL. So if you need to do a big area and you need a lot of plugs fast, locally that's harder to source to get, or does anyone know of a place where you can get 150 plugs quickly and easily, one species that I didn't find it, but I'm new to this game as well. So yeah, there's some online places. This one's coming out of Illinois, but and their prices when you're buying bulk like that helps with the prices on that as well. So the reason why the city was willing to help reimburse for part of this project was just because of the water-wise angle on this. We had the last 12 months? That was the highest on record, something like that. Is that right? Yeah. So it seems to me, if you look into the future, that it's likely that we're going to need plants that are able to handle heat and drought and these sorts of conditions. Probably is going to be more likely in the future. And so kind of responding now and getting things that are in there now and getting the roots in that can tolerate that. The one thing is babies have to be watered. So like my water bill last year was the worst I've ever had, and that's just because there were so many babies out there. And we had such an extreme drought going that they had to be watered. But, and we've had a great spring so far. Haven't had to water once, and that's amazing. And that's my hope for the future too, is put some nice long-rooted plants in there, pack them in tight so there's not a lot of bare earth showing, and then nature does what it does. June. Also kind of a fine month, really, isn't it? My birthday coming in a couple weeks, very exciting. 80-20. So Douglas Tallamy talks about 80-20. 80-20 is kind of the ratio, to say that you're going to be 100% native plants is an admirable goal to get to, but it may or may not be realistic. I'm really attached to those peonies. I've got a hydrangea that I got from my grandfather, Bestafar, and like those are staying in my yard. So Tallamy says, aiming for 80-20 is kind of a nice balance to sort of aim for, and that is, so I put that up there just to say, now we're going to go into some apologetics. If you've driven past Orchard Street Pocket Prairie in the last month or so, what you will see is there are poppies everywhere, and there were poppies everywhere last year as well. And part of that, and those are an introduced plant, those are not native, although the honeybees, which is also not a native species, also a visitor that, they kind of go together, they love each other, and that's fine. That's fine, but like I'm playing the long game here. So like come back in a decade and see what I've got. But in the meantime, if there's a patch of earth that's bare in my yard, it doesn't stay bare, it becomes bindweed overnight. Like it's incredible how much bindweed I have. Some of you that have recently visited my yard, thank you for helping me pull some bindweed, Tony. I don't even, so if you have tips on how to control that, I would be very happy to have them because I struggle. So in the meantime, poppies, snapdragons, larkspur, these are all things when I winter sow, they're popping up in the jugs in March. And when I pop them in the ground, they outcompete bindweed and they look pretty, and people recognize it as traditional pretty. I think they're pretty, the bees think they're pretty. And in the meantime, they're keeping the bindweed down. And then the long game is I go back, as I'm pulling out the poppies now, I'm going back in behind and I'm putting in natives behind. So just like any garden, there's going to be a succession. Things are going to change over time. And one year to the next, it's never going to look the same. Succession planting. Well, there's a slight, wow. So, it's kind of wonderful to go out into the garden. Like every week I'm out there wandering around just kind of looking and noticing what's changed. And it's just amazing, first you get all the, like the squirrel tail grasses is coming up, and and the poppies and some other things, and then it just, you just keep moving like every week into just a whole new set of blooms and textures and colors, and different bugs are showing up as different things are blooming, and it's really kind of amazing. So just paying attention to what you're planting and how you're planting things for like a succession of color and a succession of texture and a succession of critters that are going to be attracted to those plants that you put out there. And that's been kind of amazing to watch.
What are they?
Those are artichokes. One of many experiments I did last year and this year. And you know what? They're giant thistles, but if you eat them before they open up, they are artichokes. Yeah. Yeah, not native, zone 10, but anyway, that's a whole other topic, which is fun to talk about. So some of these pictures, I'm not going to have a lot of words on them. It's just, again, the colors in some of the native plants are just, like, I wouldn't have said that intense orange is not really my color, it's not my color at all. And that butterfly weed, when it's going, and it's going right now, it just takes my breath away. It's just so beautiful. And then, seeing all the critters on it on top of that as well. Right plant, right place. So I've got shade, I've got part shade, and then the Orchard Street Pocket Prairie is all full sun. And it's just kind of fun when you see a plant just thriving because it's getting the right moisture and the right nutrients and the right sunshine, right plant, right place. It'll perform really well. And read your tags, and it's kind of amazing just to see how little effort is required when you've got the right plant in the right place. Matrix planting, so layers. Mostly I'm planting a lot of prairie grasses. And Benjamin Voigt wasn't the first one to talk about this, and I can't remember the first person who used this terms, but Benjamin Voigt is the person that I kind of got the ideas from, as far as like first putting in your matrix layer and then putting in a few flowers here and there, and then having your other layer on top of that. Basically, the idea is to crowd out weeds, and it gives you just kind of a nice framework for thinking about how to organize your space. Reminds me a lot of Bestafar's garden, again, just having all of the different layers of plants to look at. August, we're back to school now, and Bindweed gets to do as it pleases for a few weeks here. This is a Talamy idea again. So what Doug Talamy was talking about, just different plants you have in your garden. And native is best because that's what co-developed with your fauna, your bugs and your bees and your animals. And so they recognize that it's got the right pollen with the right fat content and nectar, all of those complicated things that he studies. Your natives are going to do that, whereas my poppies, which are gorgeous, do not have the same content, like nutritional content for your native bees and birds and such. So introduce, that's where my poppies are. So introduce, it's outside the native range, but they're not prone to spread. They're not going to take over a wild area. Like branched oak isn't going to be overtaken by my poppies or my peonies. Introduce. And then there's the invasives, and those are the ones that we have to be careful. Calorie pears, burning bush. There's others that we have frequently around town. Those are the ones that you can plant them in your yard, but they're not staying there because the birds are going to take them elsewhere. So those are the ones you kind of have to.
What's the milk bottles or bottles in there?
You know what? These guys here. So yeah, that's another propagation by cutting. That was another experiment I tried with some success. It's kind of amazing. You just cut it off and peel it and rooting hormone and stick it in some sand and keep watering it. And then all of a sudden sticks turn into plants. Like it's this whole other world that I'm just learning about that, I don't know. It's just kind of fascinating. It just keeps unraveling. Like the deeper you go into nature, there's just so many ways that it's spring-loaded to be like on your side and make your life easy. It's just a matter of
But those are bottles.
Yeah.
Do they not get very hot in the summer?
Oh, right. You know what? So this was August, and I don't know if you remember August of last year, but it got very hot in those bottles. Like it got to it was like 120 heat index. Remember in August last year? It was awful. I put them in the shade, and when the heat index got to that, I fried most of them. A few of them made it. But yeah, a lot of them fried. But it shouldn't have, but it did, yeah. The intention was to keep the moisture in, you see. And they weren't in the sun most of the time. And I would say we give that experiment like a 28% success. I would say there's a bit to be learned on that one yet. Thank you for asking. Thank you. Yeah, so you're getting, when you start getting into August and you start to get the seed heads, this gives you a second chance for planting or seeding. So like Midwest Natives is going to close down here after Saturday, and then they're going to open up again in August. So people think about spring just because the main horticultural industry emphasizes spring planting, but fall is your second and better for some things. Fall is a better time to plant some things. So you get a second chance at planting, and September gives you those same options. It seems our last frost was, my gosh, last year, I forget what the date was, somewhere in mid-October though, maybe the 12th or the 13th, like it was pretty late. It's glorious. I mean, I think April's probably my favorite month, but when you start getting into October and September, when all of those textures come out, that's pretty remarkable. When plants are, finding caterpillars everywhere and colonies and things are established, things can start to look tired and tattered, but just all of those textures. And then it's also just a time for, collecting and planting seeds again too. So again, the first year my seeds came from places that I purchased, online or around town. But then after you've got mature plants in the fall, I mean, you never have to buy milkweed seeds again, that's for sure. And just, right? I mean, they're everywhere. I don't have a slide on plant sociability, and I should have talked about, be careful when you're, there are some seeds that are very happy to put themselves everywhere. Stay tuned for next year's story about that. So, October comes, that's when your first frost is coming, and, your first killing frost comes, which I'm always a little bit sad to see that, but I sure love it when the trees start to turn colors and, when you've got the inflorescence of all of the prairie grasses going at the same time. That's a different kind of beauty, and it's no less poetic for me anyway. So Talamy talks a lot about ecosystem services. So your native plants are going to do a lot, in addition to being beautiful, in addition to feeding your soul, they provide ecosystem services. So clean air and water, flood control, pollination for food, pest control, carbon storage. There's so much to ecological gardening beyond just the beauty of it, which I do think it is beauty. It's just a different kind of pretty sometimes. So you get into November, and I've already talked about the inflorescence. Little blue stem is probably one of my favorite grasses, just because the color and the texture and the seed heads, and just year-round, it is. I didn't cut mine back this spring, I just left it up, so it was just those orange, they're still there, the orange, the grass is still there, and it just gives such an amazing backdrop, and the movement when the wind's blowing, and the texture and the color. I mean, I can just stand there and just stand there and watch that for long periods of time and just feel so much calmer. I don't cut anything back just for the intention of leaving it up for birds, and I do find, you can see when there's snow, not very much snow very often these days, but when you go out there, you can see where people have been digging around in the blooms and the footprints on the ground. So it's a nice bird feeder for birds as well as being beautiful. Okay, all right, we've nearly made it to the end of this section. There is, we make it to December, and, a lot of time is, weather is getting worse outside, or colder anyway, and so a lot more time is being spent by me indoors at this point. So this is a time where I start buying seeds again for the next year, so the cycle is about to come full circle here. So you've got seeds that you're purchasing or that you saved, and then storing them. When I collect them, I just put them in big, paper bags from the grocery store. And then later, when I have time, I take them and sort them out and try to get some of the holes off and put them into smaller envelopes. And then I just keep them all, the purchased ones and the ones that I'm seed saving, I just keep them in 4x6, they're meant to be for photos, but the seed pack fits in there just perfectly. And it's really easy to flip through and have them organized. And anyway, systems, it's a system that works. Doug. Okay, this is Doug Talamy, and How many of you were at his talk? Yes. Oh my gosh, wasn't that amazing? Like, oh my gosh, there are people who are just such persuasive speakers, and I have so much respect for the work that he is doing and just how persuasive he was in my life to kind of shift me into a new paradigm. So, part of what he did is his call to action about asking people to like bring nature home is one of his books. In the past, we've asked one thing of our gardens, that they be pretty. Now they have to support life, sequester carbon, feed pollinators, manage water, and it's wrong one. Let's try this. He is one of the founders of something called the Homegrown National Park. How many people are part of the Homegrown National Park? Okay, yeah. It's a wonderful. I'm going long on time, so I'm not going to take us there, but. At the website, you've got so many different resources and links to his talks, and resources for finding like which plants are right for your ecotype, and I mean it's just packed filled with resources. So if you have questions, this is probably one of the best places you can go to find inspiration and ideas and resources. Okay. I think, yay, we've made it to the third part, and this is the shortest of the three. So we are on the home stretch here, and thank you for bearing with me, folks. We're going to end with just the idea, which is kind of vision and like sort of the call to action. There's a lot going on in the world, and if you're paying attention, there's a lot going on in the world, and people feel a lot of different ways about what's going on in the world, and as a result, there's a lot of fear and anger and distrust and like tension about how this is going to end. And I can't solve any of that for you. But I really liked this cartoon when I found it. The cartoon, you've got two gardeners, and one says, "Aren't you worried about 2024, what it will bring? Everything's so crazy these days." And then the other gardener says, "I think it's going to bring flowers." And, "Oh, really? Why?" "Because I'm planting flowers." And I just feel, right? I just think that's kind of, in a way, it's kind of perfect because you don't control some of those big current events that are happening around us. Like an individual person, I'm not saying that you can't make an impact on there, but probably not much of an impact. But you can make an impact in some other ways that have real differences in your life and in your neighborhood and your community. So I like the Wendell Berry quote always, just be joyful though you've considered all the facts, is a quote that I've always appreciated. As well, and it just felt like it belonged on that slide. So 3 things, 3 visions for Orchard Street Pocket Prairie as I close this down. One is gardening with nature in mind is the direction that my land that I'm stewarding is going to go at this point. 2, I want to make beauty accessible. I had it accessible to me as a child, and that has changed for many children at this point. And I also want to give an example with resources and encouragement as I'm doing it, so other people can learn from my mistakes and I can learn from theirs. I hope to have a dialogue. So ecological gardening, I keep adding host pollinator plants for more species. So the first year it was low-hanging fruit. I planted milkweed, and I've got monarchs. There weren't monarchs out there in 2022 because there were no milkweeds out there. Now I can't count them all. There's so many monarch caterpillars. So this year I noticed I had no swallowtails last year. And I was hoping this morning, or on my garden walk before I came here, that I could report to you that this year I have swallowtails, and I have to say, not yet, but I think they're coming. If you plant it, they will come. So we have fennel and golden Alexanders and fennel and all kinds of things out there, and you'll have to stay tuned for next year's talk if they actually show up, but I think they will. And then second part of the vision is I want to create a beautiful sense of place that draws people in, and especially children. When I took a day off from teaching and was working in my yard, and like the school right across from the street from me, there were 3rd graders, which I'm later told this is called walk and talk, and they were like, there's a sidewalk, square, and they're walking, and talking, and they're marching kind of like around the square just to burn some energy. And one of the children, whose name was Quentin, kept getting off of the sidewalk and like, woo, he was like walking over in the grass, and like the teachers were like, Quentin, get off the grass. And then he made a song about off the grass, and a bunch of the kids were joining in. And then more teachers got upset about that. Now, the story is not meant to be down on teachers. Actually, I am one. How many other teachers, where are you? Yeah, okay, all right, okay, right? and who amongst us hasn't had Quentin? But at the end of the day, I have no idea what the stories, what that day was like before then. But I am quite certain there was not much grass that Quentin was walking on. And like, why? Why wouldn't, like, Quentin walk on, anyway. So I want to make a sign eventually that has a little path, like, Quentin, walk on the grass. Will be a sign that may end up in my Orchard Street at some point. This isn't the most happiest quote, but this is something that I think about a lot, and it's part of what drives me forward in wanting to make this sense of place, and that is, within the span of a few decades, the way children understand and experience nature has changed radically. The polarity of the relationship has reversed. Today, kids are aware of the global threats to the environment, but their physical contact, their intimacy with nature is fading. That's exactly the opposite of how it was when I was a child, and that is absolutely true. So if there's anything that I can do that can perhaps provide an experience, you're not going to protect what you don't love, and you're not going to love what you don't have access to. And so part of what I want to do is make nature accessible. I live right across from an elementary school. I'm at the end of a block that goes two lots, and then it goes, so that's Orchard Street, and then it goes the whole distance from 50th Street from Orchard to Dudley, and then on the other side, it's all of Dudley for 2 lots. So it's a big corner lot across from a school, and it's also where people get on the Mopac Trail. So there's 400 families walking by my yard every day, and I want children to have access to nature, and I want people to have access to beauty that's found in nature. And I don't want them, they may or may not have access to finding it elsewhere. So let it be in my yard if that's something I can control. And it is something I can control. I can plant flowers. So my goals is Encounter Trail for Children. Come on over, Quentin. Educational signs, free native seed. So instead of a free library, I want to have free packets. I've got so many milkweed. Do you need butterfly weeds? I got so many weeds, or so many. I do have so many weeds. That's not what I meant to say. So many seeds to share, and I think I would love to have that so other people can do the same. And then just continued development as a diverse natural area is where I want it to go. So the last part of the vision is just kind of sharing it and being in dialogue and conversation with other people. There's so many other people doing this work at this point, and to kind of bolster each other and get ideas and bounce ideas and kind of build community around this is an opportunity that we have. And so I started Orchard Street Pocket Prairie just, again, to organize my own head about what this was going to be. And then also I made signs just so people walking by are like, what the heck is this weirdness going on here, would have a place to look. But it's also a place where I've had a lot of great conversations and talked back and forth with people who know a lot more than me about what I'm doing and gotten suggestions. And then I also have been able to pass on some of what I have learned as well, and that is kind of an amazing thing. So we're going to end somewhere in here. There's one more slide coming, I think, but June 22nd, tour of the wild side. If you want to come and check it out, come check it out. There's going to be 8, is it 7, 8? How many yards? 7 or 8? 8? Yeah. So there's going to be a whole bunch of different possibilities to just see how other people are doing it, and mine will be one of them. And if you're interested, you can see some of the other crazy stuff that's going on there. If you want to help me pull bindweed, there will be no shortage of that either. Last quote that I will end you with today is, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, don't assign them tasks and work. Rather, teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And that is how you do that. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
We have some questions. Questions? Lana, you must have a question. What? Thank you. She does it every time.
And we've got microphones, so. And at the end, Gary Van Diska has a file on a drone going over Knott Prairie. So you might want to get your cookies and then come back. Oh, she's holding it? Yeah. I'm just here. Who's that? Here's a question over here. Oh, Ken wants to do it?
Here's a question.
Oh,
In the back row.
I don't need a microphone.
Yeah.
For the people online, you need a microphone.
I can repeat the question as well.
I have tried many times to get milkweed to grow from seed.
Yes.
in my yard without any success whatsoever. Any tips there, or is it best to try and find some in the wild? And
They're hard to transplant.
are they? Okay, that was
Right.
going to be part of my other question.
Yeah, they
so.
don't, this
They're
taproot.
the roots or something goes down, they'll appear all over the place,
Yeah.
but you can't really dig them up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this trick to milkweed seed, I believe, because mine have grown, is cold stratification, winter sowing. It's like, so yeah, that freeze thaw, put them in you don't have to put them in your fridge, just put them in a milk jug anytime after the winter solstice. They say winter solstice to, March 22nd, or spring solstice, Equinox, thank you. And they do germinate, but then sometimes I'm an impatient person. So like with butterfly weed, I wanted to try things, and so there's other things you can do, like take a fingernail clippers and clip the end off. There's lots of videos on this. Soak it in some water. Boom! Like you'll have seedlings within 3 or 4 days, like fast. So like if you want to do it right now and you don't want to put it in your fridge, try like that method. They called it jarification, which is scarification.
This is for milkweed.
Yeah, milkweed, and it worked. I tried it because I didn't want to wait 60 days. So I just thought, let's give it a try. What could happen other than it just doesn't? I have plenty of seeds if you want to experiment on this.
Is it better to plant it with other plants around or not?
There's a slide that I did. I'm just learning this. This is in the 2024 year of learning. And that is like, I need to plant for the monarchs. And like most of the logos have the common milkweed and like, look at all that big juicy real estate. So I planted the milkweeds and they're coming up everywhere. There's a sociability scale, and they're a 5 on the sociability scale, which means they're gonna. If you don't stop them, they're coming for you. Wait, what was the question? I think I veered off. I'm sorry. No, I'm pretty sure I veered.
No, you're good. I am having trouble
That's about
from
among
the
other
seeds.
things.
So.
I think you need to throw them out in the fall.
Yeah. And I haven't done much direct sowing just because I was sheet mulching and building berms out of all
Right.
kinds of things. But yeah, that's the way nature does it. And nature, I mean, it works for nature. So
Right.
yeah, just put it in the fall and it should work. But there are other ways around it too if you want.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Why did you get so many milk jugs? Did you drink all that milk?
I don't drink milk.
That's what I want to know, because I don't drink milk either.
No, so I teach at Lincoln High, and the mill is across the street from me. And so first I went to the mill and said, "Hey, you guys, could you like just put them in and like over the course of one day, that's a huge bag of it." And then eventually they got tired of saving them for me, and Starbucks said no, but Mojave said yes for a while. And then my mom saves me milk jugs, and I use the milk jugs you saw. This is the year. I just put them in a big contractor bag in the garage, and I reuse them year to year to year. So
How
they just
many
keep.
milk jugs do you have?
Over 400. I give away a lot of them, though. I do. Yeah. Oh. Sorry, I just shoot clay on. Okay.
How did you use the eco-type when planning out your garden? Like, what about
Yeah.
it did you find useful?
Yeah. So eco-type, that's that concept where you want to get, like, not just, like, common milkweed is native to this part of the world, but you're trying to get as close as possible to specifically, like, this, like Lincoln, like not Illinois. So the truth of the matter is various degrees of success on that. Most of my grasses and sedges came from Isle, and that's Illinois. That's not same eco type. It's the right plant, but it's from another place. So I'm just learning about microbes in the soil and that whole community and how that evolves. That's not something I can talk about today because I don't know. I just know this much. A lot of the plants came from Midwest native, and you'll look on their species sheet, and they have little asterisks on there by the ones that were collected local to ecotype. And so a lot of the parent plants were collected by Midwest natives, local ecotype, and then now I'm collecting their seeds, and so that's how I'm trying to keep it, but not everything. I think that we're at a tipping point, and I think that there's going to be that sounds cynical. I think there's yeah, I think there's a tipping point. I think you're going to see a lot more people carrying native plants. I think there is profits to be made, and I think people will be interested in that part, if nothing else. And I think we'll have more options. But right now,
It's like a hardier plant because it's used to
Why-
this
why
specific-
huh?
Why care?
Oh, why care? Is that the question? Why do you care about ecotype? No.
Like does that, like having a plant that's specific from this ecotype, is it like better because it's like a hardier plant because it's used to this specific place?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think it's more about just trying to have some kind of fidelity to like what was here and trying to get as close to what was here before we kind of got rid of it. I think it's more about, oh yeah. Oh, yes, yeah.
I have a question,
Yeah.
but I don't know the answer to it.
Okay.
It seems to me there's a certain number of vacant houses and abandoned houses and empty lots around town
Yeah.
that could be used for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is there any way to take advantage of those?
Yeah. You know, so one of the visions that I had for Orchard Street Pocket Prairie is I kind of wanted it to become a sort of a contagious sort of idea, and like, because people would see like, you know, all those people walking to school or just seeing like in real time how this thing is evolving and seeing all the nuts and bolts and the setbacks and the whatevers, but it's really demystified. And so I think, I don't know the answer to your question. I know that there's been 4 or 5 people who have said that they're trying, based on what they've seen, that they're trying things just because it looks like, oh, I can do that. And so I don't know, I think part of it is just empowering people to see that it's possible, and it's like, it doesn't have to, like, who's got a lot of extra money for, you know. I just think trying to make it more doable or possible is the best way. I don't know, is I guess my final answer. That's very satisfying, huh? Yeah, I don't know.
Anybody over here? Anybody?
Yeah, but I'll think about that. Yeah.
Do you have any goals with your photography besides the documentation?
Oh, so, yeah, oh wow, that's a big talk. Wow, okay, yeah, my mom is always, you need to sell those things, and that is, so, yeah, this is a hard one. There's a lot of different ways I can go with this. My photography is something that is like a spiritual practice for me. And I don't want it to be in service of anything. I'm kind of a purist on this. I don't want it to have to match anyone's drapes. Not that there's a problem with that. And if you're an artist and that's what you want to do but I don't want that to be part of what I'm thinking about. So for me, photography is really a process of kind of mostly close looking and meditation, and it's kind of like it's mine and it's not for sale, mostly. I just want, so my goals for photography, I mean, I've shown in galleries, I have an MFA, one of my teachers is in the room right here, right now. You know, so there were possibilities and there were opportunities along the way for photography to be something that was, you know, more financially profitable, but that isn't part of my intention for it. So my intention for, my intention for my photography is, I think, you know, I think you can find beauty wherever you're looking for it, and if I can find it in native plants and help other people to see that too, then that's a good purpose for it. So for me, walking in the garden with my camera is really about just meditation and, yeah.
What kind of camera?
Oh, yeah. Well, is that the question? Oh my gosh.
Not the original one, a secondary question.
Okay, because if I've been spiritual truth, I'm sorry. Oh my
Drone
God.
and a phone?
Honestly, I'm out there pulling weeds, and if you've looked at any of my we're gonna go on a walking garden tour now. Like the last one I did, like I'm wearing a tattered, I'm full of mud and I'm wearing, anyway, this is what's on me. I do have other cameras, I have real cameras, but honestly, pretty much all of the pictures that you're seeing are cell phone, because it's just what's on me when I'm out there gardening. I'm not taking my camera out there most of the time. So.
We have one more question.
Hi, my question is very basic, so I'm sorry to be ending it on this. But I just had a question going back to what you talked about in January with sheet mulching, with gardening that I've done in my space. Like the ground, like everywhere in Lincoln, is very clayey, very thick.
Yeah.
And I have just had a really hard time direct sowing anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, what did you do to the ground? You know, you talked about putting cardboard down, putting mulch down. What did you do to prepare that ground to be ready to accept these little baby plants?
Yes. There's two things I'm going to say about that. One, this is very lame. Don't hate me, please. My soil is really loamy. It's ready. So that's a terrible answer. But the other thing is this: a lot of the native plants evolve here in clay soil. So there's a lot of native plants that's not going to be a problem for them. I do, best anniversary gift I ever got, I think, was I got a power mixer, a big cement mixer. And so you can just right into that, and it'll loosen it up, and then you put your little plants in there, and then you can, put it back in. But
Where do you get free compost from to also help your soil?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So you guys, my God, at the dump, you can just go there and get tubs. That was on some slide, and I don't think I put the right words in there. So you can amend your soil with free compost from the dump, as many tubs as you want. So you just keep going back, and I don't know how many tubs of, thank you. I don't know how many tubs of compost I hauled, but many. And it's free.
So to quick follow up on that, if I'm thinking okay, after this I'm going to find a bunch of cardboard and I'm going to cover my entire yard and I'm going to cover it with mulch. I'm still thinking do I need to do anything? Because I want to plant something other than natives as well, that 80-20.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe you're not the best person to ask then if it's more amending, or do I need to spread some compost first and then put the cardboard down and then put the mulch down?
Compost.
Mulch, yeah. Cardboard, compost, mulch, if you couldn't hear it on the online crew. Yeah.
Thank you.
That is silly. I think that Yvonne will be around if you have additional questions after we get off the live streaming. What we'd like to ask you, we're going to thank her for tonight. Remember that next month we're having the potluck picnic before Sarah Browning speaks on evergreen trees or any kind of trees. So put that on your calendar if you're interested. Be sure to sign the register at the front when you come in, or where you came in, as you leave if you haven't done that. And then join us for some of those cookies just in the next 5 minutes. Thank you.
And after you go get your cookies, Gary Van Duska and I are going to see if we can get his drone view of Knott Prairie to come up on the screen. So you might just check back with us and see. We'll ring the bell if we're successful.
I know how tired you are.
Thank you so much.